Hi everybody. Hey, I just want to thank you for joining me for this episode of At Home with Melissa. And we're here in our pretty disorganized little project area, and which is fine. We have a lot going on here. We're preparing a lot for some upcoming projects as well. So hopefully there will be a lot in near videos. I have a friend of mine, Petey. He's going to be doing a lot of the hard work, a lot of the heavy lifting and things like that that I can't do. I still come up with the ideas, and he's graciously offered to do the actual work of things for me since I'm unable to anymore. And so that's really good. I mean, I can do the kinds of things we're doing today, which is an introductory video on growing microgreens. Now, I perused the videos that I could find there on YouTube to see what was available to talk about microgreens so that I wouldn't be investing a lot of time and effort in doing these videos if there were already really good ones out there, and I found that there really are. So I'm going to do a quick introduction. You can use the information I have here to actually get started growing microgreens if you think it looks like something you're interested in. And once you try it a little bit, if you want to delve more deeply into it, I've included some of the videos I've found on our channel, I think. If not, I will be soon, that really focus in depth on growing microgreens, different techniques for different plants and things like that. And I even found a channel that I thought looked really good from what I saw of it on growing microgreens as a little business in your home. And so I'm going to include those so that you have like one-stop shopping. If you check out this video and you think microgreens would be fun to play with and you want to get more, you can use this information to start off, and then you go, gee, I really like that, I want to get more deeply involved. Just click on one of those links and go to their videos, and you can, hook into their channel and the information that they provide. But this will give you a good start. First of all, to talk about microgreens, I guess we should start by talking a little bit about sprouts as well. And this is because they're really similar and they're kind of related in a way. Sprouts, when you hear about people talking about growing sprouts, basically that is, you just kind of grow seeds to the point where they've just germinated, where they've just sprouted out of the shell, out of the seed, and you have a little bit of plant growth there, maybe 1 or 2 sets of leaves, little tiny things, and those are sprouts. Well, microgreens are basically the next step in the growing process. And so microgreens are, they've sprouted, and you have, say, 1 or 2 sets of true leaves. You harvest them when they're about yay high, quite often. And so this is when the plants are a little bit larger than sprouts, but you're not letting the plant grow to maturity. You're still harvesting it soon after germination. Now, there are a lot of pros and maybe a few cons to growing microgreens, and I'm going to go over the ones that I see, the ones that I think that you might encounter that you might want to keep in mind. Now, if you're out there and you've grown microgreens and you have some more positives that you see in it or some more negatives, please, please, please put a comment in and let us all know so that, we know to be aware of those things as well. So, positives and negatives of growing microgreens, they are, which is similar to sprouts, being that they're such young plants and they're so small, they have sprouted out of the seed and they haven't yet used up all of the nutrients from the seed. That's what they're using to initially grow. When you plant a seed in the ground, that seed contains, in a very condensed form, the vitamins and minerals that plant needs to get started growing, to get started with its life. So when the plants are still young and tender, they have more concentration of those things because they haven't been spread out through a large plant. It's just getting that very concentrated nutrition out of the seed itself. And it's all packed in this tiny little package, so it's really condensed, really highly nutritious, and that is a wonderful thing. Also, something I really like about microgreens is that, with the exception of some things like beans and whatever that have thicker stems, they're really tender. They're really, really soft and tender, and you can use them to add flavor to any dish that you're cooking. And basically, most of them are not going to change the texture of your dish at all, because they're just going to disintegrate. They're so young and they're so tender. And you can eat them on salads. You can eat them on top of, say, grits or potatoes, in potatoes. You can eat them by themselves. They're really flexible. You can do just about anything with them. And they are packed full of flavor, packed full of nutrients. All of that's wonderful. Another really good thing is that quite frequently, you can go from planting to harvesting within a week. And that's pretty nice. You know, a week, somewhere thereabout. And that's really nice, because one of the things that can be frustrating for a lot of people when it comes to gardening is the wait time. Gardening generally requires a lot of patience. You plant something and you might have to wait quite a long while before you can then harvest it, whereas that's not the case with these. Like I said, about a week you might have a nice little harvest there. And also, they're excellent for planting in small spaces, because with the microgreens, they like to be planted really, really close. Basically, you put a nearly solid layer, single layer of seeds on your soil, and your microgreens grow from there, and they grow really tightly together, so you can grow a little crop of microgreens in a container that's very small. And so if you just have an apartment or whatever, you can grow them anywhere. Also, something I really like about them is that I think they're really pretty. I know that sounds like a silly thing, and usually I focus on the utility of things, but I think microgreens are really pretty, and they make a nice edible centerpiece for your table when you're having company over for a meal, say. And they also make a nice decorative addition to, say, a backsplash, or on top of a bar, or on a side table, and things like that. They're really, really pretty, because they tend to be rich in color once you get them growing, and they're short, so they're perfect for in the middle of a table. You can still see your guests over them, and they can eat them as you're visiting, which is kind of unique. It's not something that everybody does. So, you know, I like all those things about it. And about the only thing, well, two things that I don't like about microgreens is that, one, you're planting them very close together. So if you're growing microgreens, you will go through a lot more seed than if you were planting mature plants. It just makes sense. If you're planting your seeds right next to each other, as opposed to spacing them out 1, 2, 3, 4 feet apart, you're using a lot more seed to get your product, and you're eating the product smaller. Therefore, yes, you're going through more seed. If you're buying your seed, you're going to have more expense invested. Another thing that can be a problem is mold and mildew. Since they're so closely packed together in your containers, you need to watch out for the growth of mildew. Now, it's really easy to deal with if you do have it. Just put some hydrogen peroxide into a spray bottle, spritz it. You might want to spritz as soon as it grows. You will see something that looks kind of like a mold or a mildew when your seeds first sprout quite often, and that's just a little bit of fuzz that comes out and is actually part of the plant and grows from the seed. If that remains or spreads, you might have mildew, and you want to take your hydrogen peroxide, spritz it really well. That will kill off your mold or mildew and then evaporate off. It won't harm you. It won't harm the plants. Don't just totally inundate it. Just give it a nice spritzing, okay? And you can do that once a day or every so often, and that'll keep the mold at bay, and or fungus, whatever, those types of things. And so those are the only bad things that I've ever really encountered that I can think of with the microgreens. The amount of seeds you go through and the keeping them free of those damp area type problems. And again, it's easy enough to deal with. So basically, another thing to do to prevent mold, mildew, fungus from growing in them is make sure everything from your pots that you're planting in or trays to your medium to the drip trays that you might use, keep all that really, really clean. When you wash them really well in hot soapy water. That should be enough. If you want that extra little bit of help to be sure that you've gotten rid of germs and fungus and molds and things, you can add hydrogen peroxide or bleach to your water as you're washing them. And just make sure to rinse it really well, particularly if you're using bleach. And there you have it. You're good to go. You have a nice, healthy start for them. And they're very easy to grow. Let me show you here, for example. Look at this. This is neat. This is a tiny little container that was a cat food can. So you know how small those are. Look at that. That's all the deeper it is. That'll be deep enough because you're not growing a full plant. So it doesn't need room for your roots to really, really grow deeply. You just need a little bit of space because you're harvesting them when they're really young and tender. And so little shallow things do great for microgreens. And so I've taken, and when you grow anything in any kind of container, like I've said before in other videos, if it'll hold your growing medium and your water, you can grow things in it. Now I've drilled drainage holes in the bottom because you don't want extra water to just sit in there and drown your plants. So make sure that anything you use, you can go real shallow with it and that's fine, but make sure you have drainage holes in the bottom. Okay, so you can use these, and in fact I'm going to, because since you plant the seeds so closely together, you use a lot of seeds in a really small space, and I have some seed packs that need to be planted because if the seeds are still viable, they won't be for all that much longer because they're kind of old. They're not for this season, and some of them aren't even for last season, but I don't want to just throw them away assuming them to be bad. I'm going to give them a chance to grow. And if you go with a shallow container like this, you're not using much of your soil, which for me right now is a very good thing because I'm using soil that I had stored in the house, because right now we have temperatures that are well below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, well below freezing, and the ground is frozen solid outside. I cannot harvest any soil from outdoors, so I'm using my stockpile indoors, and I need to make it last. So I like that you can get a lot out of very little extra soil being used. Now another thing that I have, because if you're using cans, something to be aware of is that whether it's cat food can, a vegetable can, what have you, companies line them with a plastic. And you've seen the white plastic on the insides of cans and heard warnings that they can cause health problems. And you might see some cans out now that look like there's no plastic in there. It's not white. Well, they're coating it. My understanding is that's a different kind of plastic. They're coating them as well. And that can have potential health consequences too. But that's what they're using for our food. And I am planting some of my microgreens in containers that have that plastic on the inside, but something I prefer is something like this. Look at this tiny little window box. It's itty bitty. Look at that. There's my hand. Tiny. And it's really adorable. I've had it since high school, and it's made out of cedar, so I've pre-filled it, as I have with the cat food can, with some pre-moistened soil, and so it's got that cedar kind of wet, and it's releasing that wonderful smell. I love the smell of that wet cedar. And so I'm going to plant that. Now picture this. Once they grow, once the microgreens grow, this is going to be this solid mass of tiny little green plants just poking out of here. It's going to be beautiful. So I'm going to plant some kale in here. This is going to be a little thing of Italian broccoli. And, oh, this is kale. What am I planting in here? Oh, brown mustard is going into the cedar planter. This is the kale. This is Italian broccoli. Okay, so let's get started. I'll show you how to do it. Basically, this works for most plants that you're going to plant. You fill your container to just below the top. Look at that. A lot of excess water in here. See how made a mess. But That's going to drain out my holes in the bottom. Now what you want to do is you want to compact that soil. And generally when you're growing the microgreens, a lot of people use, say, a wooden block, because you can grow in, say, seed starting trays and things like that. And so they'll use a piece of wood that just fits inside that tray with a handle on it, push it down, or whatever. It's just something, you want to compact that soil. Now I have here mortar and pestle. I always get mixed up what's the mortar and what's, I think these are the pestle, aren't they? Or are these the mortar? If you know, let me know in the comment section. But, you know, you've seen them. And I have this one made of wood that's coming in nice and handy. I'm using that to compress the soil a bit. And, again, it's a little bit below the top of the container. Not a lot. Because when I water the plants in here, I'm going to... I am making such a muddy mess. But when I water the plants, I'm only going to be spritzing them with water. I'm not going to be pouring water on them. So I don't need a lot of extra room for water between the top and the soil, because it's not going to be floating around in there. So you compress the soil, and then you get your seeds, and we'll start with the Italian broccoli. And what you want to do when you plant them is you want to make basically a single solid layer of seed. So again, that's why I'm using just a teeny little cat food jar, or can rather, for my seeds. Oop, and I'm losing a lot of them. Because these seeds won't go too far, being that I'm planting these tiny little seeds butted right up next to each other pretty much. So you want to fill your space, and then you're going to, again, and you can put a tiny layer of soil over them as well, especially if you're growing peas or beans, something with a thicker stem that you need to be held down. But these little things, yes, it is broccoli, but I'm going to be harvesting them when they're small enough that they're still going to be tiny and delicate. I'm not going to worry about putting soil over top. But you want to, again, give a light depression there. And the reason you want to do that is you want to make sure that the seeds are pretty well in good contact with the soil. You press them down, it presses the seed into the soil without it being covered. That is perfect for growing a lot of microgreens, most of them in fact. Then what you're going to do is you're going to find what you did with your paper towel. I don't know what I've done with my paper towel. Okay. Wet down, just dampen your paper towel, and you'll place that over the top of your container. Over all your soil. You'll cover it with a damp paper towel. Okay, and you'll do that for each of the ones you're planting. Now, if you're using the same kind of container to plant more than one thing, you can then stack them 2 or 3 high. And it's really nice if the one kind of fits into the other one, so that puts a little bit of weight, a little bit of pressure on top of the seeds. This container will weigh down the soil of this container, and you can stack them 3 or 4 high. I usually don't go more than 3 high, and what that does is that helps maintain that contact between the seeds and the soil. And again, you'll have your wet paper towel covering it as well. Then you put these into a dark place for about 3 days. And again, these are general rules to go by. It's a good starting place for growing microgreens. If you want more in-depth information once you get started and you're liking it, there are places that you can go, because some plants, of course, might fare even better with slightly different techniques, but this is a good starting place. So you put them into a dark place for about 3 days, and at 3 days you take them out. Now I have here some seeds that I planted about 3 days ago. This is pak choi, and as you can see, it did have a weighted lid on it, and it just pushed it up kind of, so I removed the lid earlier than I was going to. And look at that, how pretty. just kind of a solid bit of growth, like a nice little pillow. And if I put it down lower, you can get an idea of how that would look on your table as a centerpiece. Very nice. And you can see that it's not really all that lush, deep green right now. And it won't be when you first take it out of your dark storage area, because these are just coming out. Now let me show you what the pak choi was on top of and weighting down. Take your lid off and your wet paper towel. See, this is a lot of times what you're going to see. It looks pretty nasty. I missed some spots there, I see. But anyway, it looks a little nasty. These look yellowed. They're not dead. That's just, they've just sprouted. You had them in a dark place, so that didn't activate the whole process with the chloroform and the photosynthesis and things like that. You've taken it out now after 3 days, and you're going to put it in a very brightly lit space. You know, or in your grower, wherever, you're going to put it out in the light. And putting it out in the light is going to green it up. These are going to green up, they're going to stand up tall, and they're going to start taking off really fast. And at about 3 inches, or when you have 1 or 2 sets of leaves, that's when you want to harvest them. And harvesting them is very easy. So this will green up right away, and this will get an even deeper color of green. Now harvesting is super easy. Basically, you can use a knife, you can use scissors. I like scissors, and the only important thing is to make sure that they're cleaned between each use, and that they are, I'm left-handed, I can't show you right-handed, sorry, and make sure that they're very sharp. These are new scissors, so I know they're sharp. And you'll just go and part way up, you'll cut them, like, you know, just a little bit above the soil. You'll cut them and take them out. And you don't even need to use soil, because, like I said, the nutrition that the plants need, since they're growing this small, is contained within the seed, basically. So you don't need to worry about giving them a lot of nutrition in what you're growing them. You can grow them in whatever potting soil you have available, which is what I'm doing because I do have some. You can grow them even in coco coir, which is ground up coconut husks that are used as an addition quite often to soil and things like that. You can grow them in the coco coir, which doesn't have a lot of nutrition. It's acid neutral, and they'll grow fine in that. You can grow them in rock wool, which is quite commonly used in aquaponics, hydroponics, things like that. You can grow them in any of these mediums. You can even grow them on a sponge if you'd like to. Now, if you're growing them on a sponge, make sure the sponge you get doesn't have anything added to it like antimicrobials and things like that, because basically you don't want to add poisonous chemicals to your food. So if you... Gracie's helping. Hi, Gracie. What's that? That's cabbage. And so, yeah, lots of stuff. She's my helper. We have a lot of helpers. Basically, whenever I do anything, most of the household likes to be in the room with me. All that excitement, they just have to be a part of it. So, see you later, Gracie. Apparently she had other things to do. So you can grow them in a lot of different media. You don't need to worry too much about the nutrition that you're adding or anything like that. You're going to compact it anyway, so you really don't need to worry about keeping the soil light and fluffy or anything like that either. And basically, as they're growing, once you've taken them out of the dark space, now check them each day in the dark space, make sure that paper towel is staying moist, and if not, spritz it with non-chlorinated water. When you take them out, same thing. You're going to want to, at least twice a day, more if you want to, spritz it with non-chlorinated water. That'll keep it growing nice and green. Don't let it dry out. And in about a week, like I said, generally you're going to have a harvest. And that's all you need to know that I can think of about the growing the microgreens to get you started. Can't think of anything else. Now, if you have any questions about anything that I've said in this video, though, feel free to... Oh, just thought of something. Sprouting seeds, where to get them. Now, I suggest that if you're growing sprouts or microgreens, that you buy your seeds in bulk, because you're going to go through them fast, and you're going to need more. And you want to, if you want to keep eating microgreens, you want to keep once or twice a week planting more, and you're going to need a lot of seeds. Sprouting seeds are good to use. A lot of people will tell you, oh, make sure you use sprouting seeds for sprouts and microgreens. I don't see where that's important. I really don't. I mean, they're seeds. So I like to buy them in bulk. You want to find some place where you can get your seeds cheaply in bulk, that they're going to germinate well. And while I buy from different places, different times, and just basically do a Google search, buy bulk vegetable seeds, and go from there, the only place I can think of offhand at the moment is Sprout House. And they sell bulk seeds, good prices, and so I get some of my seeds from there. They don't have a huge selection, but they have a nice selection, especially for the microgreens and sprouts. Now, these seeds that you buy that are marketed to be used in sprouting and microgreens, they're seeds. You can grow full-size plants with them as well. And like I said, you can buy bulk seeds that are just bulk packages of seeds that are sold generally to farmers growing a lot of things in a monoculture, things like that. And you can grow them as sprouts and microgreens. You can grow them as full-size plants. You don't need separate seeds for separate purposes. That little head you see on screen now, that is baby Noah, the youngest feline member of our family, and that's his nose. See, I told you they'd join us. They have to take part. And Noah's fun. Noah, come here. Let's introduce you. Come here, Noah. Noah. Where are you going? Okay. This is Noah. And smell. Want to smell? Yeah. Noah is loving and cuddly and sweet and active and curious. He's great fun. They all are. They are. And they all have totally different personalities. But he's gone off to follow Gracie, so we might hear things crashing soon. They like to play. But that's all I can think of for the microgreens and the sprouts to give you a good start. Like I said, I've either already included different videos on this channel that you might want to follow up if you try this out using the techniques that I've shown you. You can try these out and see if you like it, and if you do and you want to get more deeply involved, I've included some videos that you can click on here that will give you some more in-depth information, and they're videos that I've really liked and found useful, found informative, and thought would probably be helpful to people. And at least with one of them I know of, I checked out their channel, and they actually do a lot of video geared toward those who want to grow microgreens as a business, and so that's a nifty thing too. Check it out. And in the meantime, I hope you really enjoy and that you have a lot of fun growing these, because they are fun. You get pretty fast return on effort invested with microgreens. So yeah, it's neat. And I hope you're just out there having a good time and living, laughing, and learning until the next time that we see you. And I'm going to go now because little Noah's getting a little bit rambunctious. He must want to play, and if I don't play with him, he's going to interrupt us anyway. So I'm going to go play with the baby, and you go and enjoy your day, and hopefully we see each other again very soon. Thanks again for spending your time with us. Bye-bye.